The backbone of India's economy, its 140 million farmers rising in what became one of the largest, longest and most determined protests in human history. For over a year, tractors rolled, highways were blocked, and thousands camped in freezing winters and scorching summers at Delhi's borders, all against three controversial farm laws passed by the government in 2020. Today, after deep research into official records, parliamentary debates, Supreme Court proceedings, and protest data, we uncover the full story of the 2020-2021 Indian farmers' protest, a movement that shook the nation and forced a historic government U-turn. The story begins in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. In June 2020, the central government introduced three ordinances aimed at reforming India's agriculture sector, which employs nearly half the country's workforce. These were rushed through Parliament in September 2020 and became law without extensive debate or recorded voting, sparking immediate outrage. The three laws were: First, the Farmers' Produce Trade and Commerce and Promotion and Facilitation Act, allowing farmers to sell their produce outside the traditional APMC mandis anywhere in India. Second, the Farmers' Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Act, creating a framework for contract farming with private companies. Third, the Essential Commodities Amendment Act, removing stockholding limits on essential food items like cereals, pulses and onions, except in extraordinary circumstances. The government's stated goal was clear and ambitious: modernize agriculture, remove middlemen, give farmers freedom to sell directly to buyers, attract private investment, and ultimately double farmers' income. Prime Minister Narendra Modi repeatedly said these laws would unshackle farmers from the outdated mandi system, reduce wastage, and connect them straight to markets and exporters. Supporters called it a historic reform that would end the monopoly of commission agents and bring technology and capital into farming. But for millions of farmers, especially from Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, and other states, these laws felt like an existential threat. They feared the laws would dismantle the minimum support price system that guaranteed them a safety net for crops like wheat and rice. Without strong regulation, powerful corporations would dominate, dictate prices, and exploit small farmers through unequal contracts. The removal of stock limits raised suspicions of hoarding and price manipulation by big players. Most importantly, farmers demanded a legal guarantee for MSP on all crops, something the laws did not provide. They saw the reforms as favoring corporates over the Aam Kisan. Protests erupted almost immediately. Local rallies in Punjab and Haryana in August-September 2020 grew into a massive Delhi Chalo march in November. Lakhs of farmers drove tractors and marched towards the national capital but were stopped at the borders. They set up permanent protest camps at Singhu, Kikri and Ghazipur borders, turning them into self-sustained protest cities with langars, medical tents, libraries and even stages for cultural programs. At its peak, over 40,000 farmers were camping at the borders, supported by millions across the country through strikes, rail rokos and solidarity marches. The movement was largely peaceful, led by over 40 farmer unions under the Samyukt Kisan Morcha banner. The government held multiple rounds of talks, 11 in total, but refused to repeal the laws, offering only amendments and a temporary suspension. Tensions escalated. On Republic Day 26 January 2021, a tractor parade turned violent at Red Fort, leading to clashes, one death and hundreds injured. The Lakhimpur Kheri incident in October 2021, where 4 farmers were allegedly mowed down by vehicles linked to a union minister's son, further inflamed emotions. Over 700 farmers died during the protest period due to cold, including COVID, suicides and violence, according to farmer unions. The Supreme Court stepped in on 12 January 2021, staying the implementation of the three laws and forming a committee to resolve the deadlock. The court acknowledged the farmers' suffering and the need for dialogue. Yet the protests continued undeterred. Finally, on 19 November 2021, in a surprise televised address, Prime Minister Modi announced the repeal of all three laws. He said the government could not convince a section of farmers despite good intentions and apologized.
Parliament formally repealed the laws on 29 November 2021. The farmers celebrated, distributed sweets, and by 11 December 2021, they dismantled the protest sites after the government also agreed to withdraw cases against protesters and form committees on MSP and other demands. The repeal was hailed as a huge victory for people's power and democratic protest. Critics of the government call the laws a corporate-friendly move pushed without consultation. Supporters of the reforms argued that the repeal was a setback for much-needed agricultural modernization and that political pressure had won over economic progress. Friends, the farmers' protest was never just about three laws. It was about trust between the government and India's annadatas, the food providers of the nation. The movement showed the power of organized, peaceful resistance in the world's largest democracy. It reminded everyone that no government, however strong, can ignore the voice of those who feed 1.4 billion people.